We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
Good evening, folks. You're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper.
The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
Time, weather, and
Highways.
Veteran of 3 foreign wars, entrepreneur, and warrior poet, Tony Arterburn takes on the issues facing our country, civilization, and planet. This is the Arterburn radio transmission.
Yes, he also forced everyone, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on his right hand or on his forehead, so that no one could buy or sell unless he had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of his name. And yes, you are tuned into the Arterburn radio transmission. It is the official broadcast of the apocalypse, which Apocalyptus is the actual name of the book of Revelation, which that verse came from. I'm Jason Barker. I'm filling in for Tony today for the great Tony Arterburn, who is out battling globalist goblin grifters and getting medals for us that we could purchase. And we are streaming today live on YouTube, X, Rumble, and WWCR, Wide World Christian Radio. And I have the pleasure of having Ashley Think, Change, Repeat from Knights of the Storm podcast with me today to ride shotgun and help me pull this thing off. What's going on, Ash?
Hey there, Jason. How are you doing today? Happy to be here.
I'm good. I'm still getting over this little crud. I don't know what they sprayed in the air, but it hit me for almost 3 weeks now.
Yeah.
But we got a good show planned for y'all today. I opened up with that Bible verse because the topics I want to cover are about digital ID, electronic payment methods, and things that people have said would lead into this beast system of payment and being able to partake in society. But Ashley has some other things to cover. What's kind of your topics you got today, Ashley?
So because you were covering the financial side of things, and Tony likes to have a nice kind of balance with the financial piece of what's going on here domestically and worldwide. And then he also discusses the a lot of the military side of things. So the potential conflicts that we're potentially finding ourselves embroiled in current times. So that's what I brought today, is a little bit of the military or the political side of things from that angle.
Yeah, and I think it's very relevant. We were just talking off air before the show. Some of this geopolitical stuff going on when it comes to war actually is very much tied into the system they're trying to bring about with payments and how they track and trace you and stuff. Maybe we'll get into it. Maybe we won't. We have an hour. We may go over an hour, but for Worldwide Christian Radio, folks, we will try to get everything that's important in within the hour, because I know we got a hard cut there, a hard break. So anyway, Ashley, do you want to jump into your first topic? I don't know if you can share your screen, if you want to share anything, or if you just want to talk it. It's up to you.
Yes, I'm going to pull up my screen here to share. If you can add that for us, Jason. So one of the things that I have today is from Al Jazeera News, and it is the reason that I like this particular page from Al Jazeera is because it's providing live updates for the U.S.-Iran nuclear talks. And the heading is U.S. Iran nuclear talks, practical proposals discussed, Tehran says. So it has 70 updates so far, and the latest is from 4 minutes ago, and it says that U.S. legislators are to force the vote on a bill to curb Trump's war powers. Democratic leaders in the U.S. House of Representatives say that they will compel their fellow legislators next week to vote on a bill that would require Trump to seek congressional approval for attacking Iran. The Iranian regime is brutal and destabilizing, seen most recently in the killing of thousands of protesters, the Democrats said in a statement. However, undertaking a war of choice in the Middle East without a full understanding of all the attendant risks to our service members and to escalation is reckless. And that's just the first blip of this particular segment of the article. And of course, I think that there are some disagreements to be had about what is actually happening with the Iranian regime and what was going on with those protesters. And I'm not claiming to have the answer to that. However, I do think it's very important for someone to be advocating for a congressional approval should they choose to go to war with Iran. And basically these these conversations are taking place before the Geneva Convention, and the story is that they are trying to come up with an agreement, basically I don't know if I want to say a peace deal, but basically just an agreement that would allow for peaceful talks to continue instead of us attacking Iran. And I think that it's really concerning, first of all, that this is on our radar at all. But we do know that we have been hearing for probably literally decades now that Iran, the threat that they posed was from a nuclear perspective. And then we recently had Trump saying that they obliterated Iran's capacity to make a nuclear weapon. And yet these conversations are still happening. And we're being told, once again, that they are X amount of time away from having a nuclear weapon, when Iran is saying that that is not what they're using it for, that they want nuclear energy. And so I think that this is, of course, it's a very concerning situation. And another article that Al Jazeera had is talking about the way that this sounds so familiar from the 2003 playbook from the Gulf War II, whenever George W. Bush said that we had weapons of mass destruction there. And it's also a playbook where war actions have been taken by the U.S. military, and a declaration of war was never passed through Congress. So this is something that Al Jazeera is keeping an eye on. Antiwar.com is keeping an eye on this, as well as Lou Rockwell. And I do think that this is I don't know, it's a very volatile situation. And I also wanted to point out that another blip from Al Jazeera was talking about the countries that have urged their citizens to leave Iran amid the U.S. threat of force. And this article was from yesterday, February 25th, and it has said that Australia, Germany, India, Poland, Serbia, South Korea, Sweden, and the United States have told their citizens to leave. And particularly with the United States, it said that the State Department has instructed all non-essential staff to leave the embassy in the Lebanese capital of Beirut. And of course, there's association with Lebanon and Hezbollah, who is considered a terror group. So there's a lot of moving parts to what we're seeing right now. And my concern, and not to be fearmonger, is that this is a potential situation where we may see some type of a false flag. That is purely my own speculation. That is not based in anything at all, just based on the nature that there feels to be a vulnerability right now. So we're getting the messaging that they are working on, peaceful talks, peaceful discussions, and ways around this. But what we know for sure is that the Greater Israel Project is in play, and that does include Iran. We also know that with the seizing of Maduro from Venezuela, that has allowed the United States to take over the oil production in that country, and that was the stated goal. Now, my understanding is there are some difficulties as far as actually turning the Venezuelan oil into usable oil, but that was said that could be a way to circumvent the resources that are coming from Iran in the event of a war with them. So I do think that is an interesting, development in light of what we're seeing currently. What do you think, Jason?
Well, I think definitely oil plays a big part into it, and that ties into my topics to a certain extent. If you look at the cookie jars that we have our hands in right now, okay, Venezuela, number one, I said straight from the get-go, it's about the resources, the oil for one, but there's also other resources out there. I do understand that we did give them technology to be able to refine the type of oil that they have. And maybe they reneged on it. Maybe, I don't know what the deal was, but we're trying to get back in there and get access to that. And I think that has to do with the situation with the dollar and how BRICS could be competing with it on the petrodollar stage. The Iran thing, however, just Iran alone. I mean, when was the last time we had a formal declaration of war? I think it was World War II, right?
If I recall, it has been a very, very long time. Definitely.
Yeah, and we had, you mentioned false flag. Well, we had Pearl Harbor that had occurred, which was potentially allowed to occur so that we could have that excuse to do a formal declaration of war. But we moved on since then with Korea. Well, you name the conflict since then, right? Vietnam, Korea, Afghanistan, Iraq, all this stuff. Police actions, no formal declaration of war that I'm aware of. I think that's a good thing that they should ask for that. I don't know how that's going to work out. We've been fighting via proxy, and I'll bring one thing to people's attention. A couple of years ago, remember when we were stationed up in Poland, kind of assisting Ukraine with their conflict that's been going on as a money laundering operation, in my opinion, their conflict with Russia. We had one of our drones clipped off the coast of one of the coastal areas of Russia. And I did the math on it, and I said, there's no way that drone could make it that far and turn around and come back. The range is off. So I really believe we have boots on ground, and I know for a fact that we have boots on ground in places that we supposedly, air quotes, don't have boots on ground, but they're there as advisors. But is it a matter of like who pushes the button? It's our equipment that we're sending them. It's our personnel to train them, and it's our people standing there overseeing them. And you just have somebody else push the button. That still, to me, qualifies as boots on ground. And we're in a hot war at this point without a declaration of war. And if you go back and look at that story about the drone, I tracked it on Google Maps and figure out the mileage. Even with the lightweight version with no payload, just a observational drone, it did not have, I mean, maybe they could have got about 15 seconds of video or footage and then flown back to Poland where these things are stationed. But no, I don't think that's the case. They either flew them off of a carrier, which is in a body of water we're not allowed to be in, or they flew them directly out of Poland and we had people on the ground there. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of stuff going on. I think it's tied to the dollar. Because if you look which nations that we're in conflict with, either directly or via proxy, it all has to do with people who are challenging the dollar. And when it comes to the topics I want to talk about today, it's because we're not ready to implement the digital dollar to save that sinking ship, or at least keep the bubble afloat a little longer. So a lot of this international conflict we have is actually because our Congress is overspent. It's overspent. It's basically sold us out. We're all broke. I mean, what's the national debt right now? What's each person's portion of that national debt is going to be more than their net worth over their entire lives. It's crazy. Sorry to rant there.
No, that's okay. I think it's about 38 trillion in national debt, and we're paying a huge amount of interest for that alone currently. So there definitely is a lot of moving pieces. And I can't claim to be an expert in this area, except to say that obviously we do have the financial piece. We do have the financial situation of the United States. We have the potential for this technate that is taking place. And we saw the technocrats desire to have, from the North Pole all the way to Panama. We definitely have what transpired in Venezuela recently, as well as now where Cuba is back on the radar. So we're hearing about Cuba, we're hearing about Colombia, we're bombing boats off the coasts in the Caribbean. So we have that happening while we have the potential for war with Iran. And there certainly is, the Constitution that is supposed to protect us in these situations, but that is not being abided by. And I do think that we find ourselves in a very precarious situation as we look at the potential for war with Iran. And Iran has stated it, according to this article, Iran has repeatedly emphasized that it will not agree to Washington's demand for zero nuclear enrichment and considers its missile program a red line that cannot be negotiated. In recent weeks, the U.S. military has significantly increased its presence in the Middle East and the Mediterranean region, including sending some of its largest aircraft carriers, the USS Abraham Lincoln and the USS Gerald Ford. And that goes on to talk about the countries that have asked their citizens to leave that particular area. And the other thing that I would say is that we know, we heard the very famous speech of 7 countries in 5 years, and the one country that has not technically fallen from the list of those countries is Iran. And I do feel like that is the piece that must fall into place for a potential greater Israel project. And who knows what other means that's going to be used for. So I definitely think that we're in a dangerous situation. And I do think that the members of Congress pressing for a declaration of war at the very least is a good thing. And I hope that we would have enough people that would refuse that. However, I don't know. We saw them saying in that article that they did believe that the regime was a brutal regime and that something needed to be done. So that's coming from the Democrats. And we know that currently what we're seeing with the Republicans in the congressional sense and in our national politics is that they seem to be full on neocon at this point. They really seem to be very supportive of any action that Trump takes. And we did see that what happens to the people that actually question him, even if they're on that side. And we saw the ousting and sort of the shunning of Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massey. And so I do think a precedent is being set that even if you're within the conservative or Republican space, whatever you would like to refer to it as, that if you speak out, that you are going to be shunned. So what we really have is Trump, Rubio, Hegseth, Caroline Leavitt, all of these people are really acting in conjunction to forward the war messaging, the war propaganda. And of course, they don't seem reasonable in what they're trying to say, especially with them already saying in several different instances that Iran's nuclear capability has been destroyed. We know that there was maybe about a year ago, I'm not even exactly sure on the time frame of when this transpired, but that there were strikes in Iran, and that was when they made the declaration of that. So that has not been a full year for sure. So we are being lied to, and I know that we know that, but it's a matter of when we are getting this much information thrown at us at all times, for us to be able to prioritize what to focus on and then to try to discern the truth in that. And I think that we do know some well-worn facts that war is the health of the state, war is a racket, and the first casualty of war is the truth. And I think that there is war in a million different ways, whether that's psychological warfare, information warfare, actual hot war. And then, yes, Jason, to your point, we have been participating in proxy wars with Israel and Ukraine. And we know that at the very least, we have sent a huge amount of financial support to those particular conflicts. And the other thing, as far as you're addressing having boots on the ground, and there are workarounds, and there have been workarounds probably for forever, but we know of workarounds that started in the Vietnam War, so that people were part of the military. This is where the term sheep dipped comes from, which is they're in the military, but then they are said to no longer be working in the military, and then they may have a job with a defense contractor such as Lockheed Martin, and
Exactly.
yet they're still involved. So they, even if they say that that there are no boots on the ground from the United States, first of all, we don't know what that would entail intelligence wise. We do know that a precedent has been set for sheep dipping and to saying that people are no longer in the military, but they're actually still involved, and that dates back at least to the Vietnam conflict. And then we also know that military contractors and mercenaries have been used in these conflicts as well. And that was where we saw, in the Middle East, back in the early 2000s, where we saw Eric Prince and Blackwater have a very important role. And we don't really know what that is still looking like, but we do know that these tactics have been used, and that mercenaries or military contractors are in play as well.
That's very everything you said is spot on, and I've seen it firsthand. Where they'll claim that we're reducing troops or a presence in an area to gain popularity, but in fact, we're actually increasing our presence. It's just going from an enlisted soldier and officers to a contracted agency. So it's slowly, what I've noticed over the last, 50, 60 years or whatever, and I haven't been around 60 years, but you can study history. They do a slow handoff from a hot operation with a military boots on ground, if you will. And then slowly, these contractors, which are a lot of these people are prior military, they just retired out and now they're working for, like you said, Blackwater or whatever. They replace the soldiers, and the soldiers are there basically to babysit. That's what I felt when I was downrange. We were there to babysit. There was some route clearance and stuff going on, and there was some door kicking in and stuff going on. But the vast majority of soldiers out there were just basically there to protect the contractors who were there to feed and house the soldiers. So it's a circular money flow is what it is. And it gets skimmed off the top, and it goes back to the whoever owns that contract, whatever corporation, and then that goes back into a campaign contribution for somebody who voted in for it, and maybe later like a CEO position where they don't even show up for work. They just get paid a salary for the rest of their life. And we've seen this over and over again. Works the same way with the pharmaceutical companies. And also it's worth noting, boots on ground is a term used when over 50% of your boots hit the ground. So I literally could have a scheduled deployment, send 49% of those troops over there as advisors or whatever they may be. But if I don't, actually send that 50th percent, it's never considered to be boots on ground. And that's something I know that's kind of in the weeds a little bit, but I'm sure they use that as a way to get people into areas that we're not supposed to be in. And I have a personal story. I was going to go on a survey mission to somewhere in Africa. I don't know where. It was all top secret hush hush stuff. Pretty sure it was for a CIA operation. We were going to do some survey work to have them an airstrip built. That's all I knew. Some kind of an airstrip somewhere in Africa. But we were replaced with contractors because it would have had to come out that we had people on the ground there. And I actually was looking forward to that mission because that's a continent I've never been to. So I was looking forward to going there and seeing what it's like and meeting the people. But anyway, there's things like that, little nuances. And one other thing you talked about Cuba, and I was talking about hands in the cookie jar. If you take a look at the plans, the long-term plans of the technates around the world, it was like, 4 or 5 technates. You can have the North American, the South American. This is a long-term plan. Courtney Turner talks about it a lot. She's really dug into it. Everything that we have our hands in, whether it be Greenland, or it be Iceland. No, it's Greenland, right? Greenland, Canada, Venezuela, Panama, and now Cuba. They all fit into this pattern of what the outcome, the goal should be. And when you talk about Iran and Middle Eastern countries, which will be part of another technate, most of those places that we're at odds with right now, either directly or via proxy, were regimes that we put in. All of these places are regimes that we put in. So either we didn't do it right the first time, or they did it absolutely right because they wanted to come back later and snatch that up. So that's one thing to think about was this all a grand scheme? Are we being reactive, or were they proactive from the get-go so that we could build this technate that's been planned out for probably almost 100 years? You know, your thoughts on that, about the individual countries we're involved with?
Yeah, I I think that sometimes it's difficult to really know exactly what's what without the benefit of hindsight 2020. So I think that what we know for sure is that there's very complicated geopolitical maneuvering that is happening right now. And we can speculate on how many people or how many countries are involved in that and in which ways and which factions may be competing. My personal opinion is that lockstep is real and it's worldwide. And I do think that if we were to see leaders that actually opposed what was taking place, that they would be risking their life and the lives of their families. We did see that with some people some leaders in Africa who spoke out against what was transpiring during 2020 with the pandemic. And, I think that whether or not, if these people were in on it, maybe they looked like they were being taken out. I don't know. That's all pure speculation. But the message is what matters. So the message to the people and the message to other potential leaders who may be speaking out is that if you do not comply, if you are not in line, then you are going to be mowed over, basically. And I think that has been a precedent that has been set in many different situations, whether that is like an influencer who was speaking out and we see them lose their job only to go to another platform that is even more successful than the one that they were at. So it's possible that that really happened to them, but it's also possible that this was part of a propaganda campaign. And one of the things that I did want to bring up to people is that I'm not trying to tell anyone what to think. I just am trying to lay out, my own personal speculation and what we're seeing being reported. And I would just remind people to keep in mind the effort over the many years, decades here in the United States that has been made as far as propagandizing people. And we did see this obviously in the first Iraq conflict, where it was said that Iraqi soldiers were taking babies out of incubators and throwing them on the ground. And it turns out that this was essentially a PR campaign with actually a PR company behind that. So there's a lot of propaganda that is happening to us at all times. So this is one of the things that I'm trying to become more and more aware about is what ways are we being manipulated? So we know that we can be manipulated visually with colors and lights and things like that. We can be manipulated through fear. And there's a high amount of, us Americans who are on medications such as maybe SSRIs and things like that that have potential side effects for numbing us. And there's all of these things kind of coming together just to present for your consideration of how we potentially are being manipulated. And the propaganda game is very strong. I mean, we see that with commercials and things like that they know they can affect a certain emotion from people, and definitely with the babies in incubators, right? So I think that really I want to be aware of this type of rhetoric going forward if we see something like that out of Iran. And there was some of that already. New York Post actually shared an article where it was talking about no, I don't want to be too detailed, but essentially that people had to be um basically surgery needed to be done on them after they were already passed because of very horrific sexual assault allegations. And a lot of people were commenting back to the New York Post that they had seen this before, so a lot of people were recognizing that this was very much sounded very familiar as far as the propaganda playbook. And then I also want to mention some of the other books or people that could be influential in that. So we obviously had Machiavelli. We had this Machiavellian way of approaching and dealing with people that is highly deceptive and essentially is promoting ladder climbing and using chaos as a ladder, actually. And then we had Michael Aquino, who was a U.S. Army officer and specialist in psychological warfare, known for his role in developing the concept of mind war. In 1980, while serving as a major in PSYOP research and analysis team leader at the 7th Psychological Operations Group, Aquino co-authored the internal Army paper From PSYOP to Mind War, The Psychology of Victory. And then if you want to refer to that paper, but that is more technique that has been developed and researched and presented to the military, and then later we saw it about psychological warfare. We know that this technique was used in Vietnam in many, many different ways, and that included haunting recordings that were played for villagers. We saw the terror and torture campaign that was completed with the Phoenix operation, or the Phoenix program, excuse me. And so these techniques have been used many, many times, and they also have been polished over these last many decades. And certainly the internet is a huge tool for manipulation. And then the other things that I wanted to point out really quick before I hand it back to Jason is the Sun Tzu, The Art of War, and the I believe it's Robert Greene, and he has the 48 Laws of Power and things like that. So I think that all of these types of books can give us some insight into what the powers that be are thinking, and ways that are already well documented in how to manipulate the population. And that's going to be through lying, through deception, in a million different ways. And I think that we are really in a prime position to see something like that, in addition to everything that we're already seeing right now.
Yeah, I would tack on to that as well when you talk about the poisoning of the people to be able to manipulate the people. EMF is a big one. We have so many studies on this. We've just rolled out 5G, and they're already experimenting or testing out 6G. The brain fog people have now, they're more easily manipulated. And if you can't critically think and figure out what's going on, you just kind of go with the flow, just trying to like you're in a rough river, and it's easier just to swim with the stream than it is to try to go against the stream. And I feel that's where everyone is now. So we're watching all this stuff happen in real time with wars and stuff, and it's really difficult to discern what their end state or their end goal is. But really, they've already laid it out. But people are just, number one, they're busy trying to pay their bills and survive. Okay, with the economy the way it is, problems with kids, and if you're a parent, you know this. Kids, they have depression, anxiety, ADHD, all this stuff that you have to deal with. It wasn't a problem 50 years ago. So that takes a toll on the parents. And now they may be dealing with brain fog because of what's in their food. And maybe they're living next to a 5G tower or something. So it's kind of easy to throw your hands up and say, whatever, I'm just going to give up and let everything roll out. I think that's why they've gotten a lot more bold now. You were talking earlier about having a proper declaration of war. I don't think they care anymore. I don't think the powers that be even care anymore. I was anticipating in September, October timeframe, 2025, that we would have some kind of a false flag. I kind of predicted it would be on our infrastructure, whether it be communications or electricity or something, because that stuff is not very well guarded. Unless you're talking AI and data centers, those things are like Fort Knox. They are locked up tighter than you can believe, which is telling in it of itself.
It is telling. Yeah, that's a
very,
great
very
point,
telling
Jason.
of how important that is to them. And if we can get to my stuff, that's going to come in very important. But anyway, I'm kind of losing my train of thought here. But I think people have just thrown their hands up and they said, I can't do anything about it. COVID was a portion of this, about isolating people, making them feel like there's nothing they can do. I just have to go along, because if I don't, I can't go to the store. I can't go to work. I can't do this. I can't do that. So now everybody has kind of given up on any kind of, number one, trying to rationalize what's going on. Number two, doing the research to see where they're going and seeing that this is what they're putting in place. I mean, like I said, we put these regimes in power. and now we're going after them. And then you look at the final goal, which is to have these technates. It's almost like if you take the United States as it intentionally was a bunch of independent sovereign states, but then now we have a federal monster over the top of us that makes it one coagulated mess. That's what they're doing on a grand scale with these technates across the world. And the UN will be the one that will be that monster in charge of it. So it really won't be separate technates with their individual sovereignty. It'll be the same rules. I mean, look at the WHO and all these other organizations that are global. Their guidelines, even going back to the war on drugs, the guidelines, the schedule, all this stuff was not set by the United States. It was set by, it was at the UN, I believe it was, that set that. And so that's what we're going to wind up seeing. And you know, not to get too far off track, but I think that they have dumbed us down through our food, our air, our water, EMF, stuff like that, to where people don't know, number one, maybe they don't know what's going on or where it's going. But number two, if they do understand what's going on and where it's going, they think there's nothing they can do about it. They just feel so isolated. And let me just hunker down in my little corner and do my job and put money into my 401k, and hopefully I can retire someday. I think that's where we're all at right now. So sorry to go off on that rant again.
No worries. Yeah, I do think that there's absolutely an effort to cause or cultivate the feelings of despair and hopelessness. But I don't think that we have to stay there. I think that what we can do is learn what we can learn, have conversations with people who can enrich us as far as contextualizing what we're seeing, but also recognize that the grass grows where we water it. I've been saying this a lot lately, and we have relationships that we can cultivate in our own home with our family and our friends. And we may not agree on everything, but we can agree that we love each other, we like each other, we want each other to succeed. And what can we do, you know, to be better? So whether that means like what obviously with Tony's business with Wise Wolf Gold and Silver, whether that means you can, you know, maybe you can spend $50 a month on saving up a little bit of coin for yourself and just having an alternative, having a store of wealth. Whether that is reaching out to a local farm or farmer or what the farmers market, and trying to find some healthier food, and maybe not even setting the standard for perfection, but just that I want to reach out and have a relationship with a local rancher and know where my beef comes from. Small things like this can help in these crazy times and focusing on what we actually have control of. And there's still a lot that we have control of in our day-to-day life. So I definitely do not want to contribute to the message of despair. Really, it's just, from my part, trying to provide a little bit of context as I see it, and what we can use, and or what we need to be looking out for, but knowing that we can affect change in our own lives. And there's a lot of possibility for that. So I don't think it's time for us to despair, but to be aware.
Yeah, and you know, you touched on something real important there, because we can complain about this stuff all day and see what's going on, but what do you do about it? You were talking about getting in touch with your local co-op or your, you know, grass-fed beef guy that maybe you can invest. I know my mom does this. She goes in with a couple other people. Maybe you can't afford to fund an entire cow for the cycle of, you know, when they get the cow and they feed it and they do all this stuff and then they butcher it, and then you get fresh, clean meat, like good meat. But you can go in with 2 or 3 people and get a share of that cow. But COVID put us all in a different world, and more importantly for the children have grown up in a distance learning. They communicate via text. Maybe their friends, their best friend may be half a world away. They don't have those interpersonal relationships right there. And a lot of us as adults have lost that as well because of COVID. We learned to remote work and whatnot. And we don't have nuclear families anymore, where my mom lives next door and my grandma lives 2 houses down, and growing up in a small town where you know everybody and you're related, or you know someone who knows someone. Everyone splits up now. My family is completely scattered across the United States. So that's why I retired here, because I have family. This is like the best spot for me to be as close as possible to as many family members as possible. It's still 2 or 3 hours drive to go there. So I think that's all by design. And And let me go ahead, if I can I go ahead and this is going to be a good way to kick us off into what I want to talk about the remoteness and the division. So I've got an article here. I'm not going to put it on the screen. I understand we have listeners on radio, so we're going to go ahead and just read it. It talks about an evolving world of digital goods and services. So it's talking about how we have changed, and this is part of the fourth industrial revolution, is getting away from manufacturing and going to a mom and pop and buying that widget or whatever. Now everything's digital, electronic, and stuff like that. Anyway, the subtitle, with the young at the helm, raising digital spending is poised to reshape consumers' wallets. And this is going to turn around and go back into the mark of the beast and the digital currency thing. Because if I can't go to Ace Hardware and buy a hammer, if I have to do that transaction digitally online, there's no cash involved. So, and the youth have been trained for this. So they're learning to slowly not use cash. Everything is right now. Well, previously it was on a credit card. Now people are starting to more and more with the youth. They're using Cash App and all these other applications. Crypto is going to be a thing for a while, but with I talked about it not last week, but the week prior when I did Tony's show, I talked about the Clarity Act. The Clarity Act gives the government oversight of the different cryptos, right? This is outside of the digital dollar they want to do, right? The stable coin. That's a pitfall right there. They put that out there because they know people are trying to go digital, or we're being pushed into that digital way, but they can't tax it. They can't control it. They don't know what's happening. That's actually a lie. They actually can track it and trace it if they want, but they're telling you that they can't because they want to get us into this digital dollar when it rolls out. But anyway, I digress. Let me read the rest of the article here. Initially confined to a handful of categories like music and ebooks, consumer spending on digital goods and services has come a long way. The rise of digital content stores and streaming platforms has played a pivotal role into bringing digital spending into the mainstream. Now, I just want to point this out. A lot of what we see as far as shaping of society comes through entertainment. You know, they say life imitates art, imitates life. They started this digital spending and rent service. Instead of owning something, instead of owning an album or owning a movie, you're renting it forever by having a subscription service. That's how they got it in the mainstream, is through entertainment. It was mostly music, and Netflix was the big one, right? Anyway, let me continue. Now digital goods and services seem poised to reach a new stage of evolution. The convergence of cloud, Internet of Things, AI, and other technologies is helping an explosion of new digital goods and services to permeate more corners of everyday life. From personalized health and fitness tech to smart collars that digitally monitor our pets, wearables for your pets, which, RFK talked about people having wearables, to premium subscriptions for a world of online content creators. A wave of emerging digital goods and services is helping meet consumer needs. Was this really a consumer need, or was this government driven for remote stuff? And also, if we talk about the origins of this digital spending in these accounts, Amazon, for the Amazon Prime service, which we had right away, where they would mail you the DVDs, and they stopped doing the DVDs, or you could do the DVDs and the streaming, but then they separated that into two separate charges. They ran at a loss for probably a decade. So, and the government assisted them in doing that with tax breaks. They were able to roll over their tax liability year after year after year to be able to snuff out mom and pop like DVD stores and stuff like that, to move us into this model of digital spending and not owning anything, but renting it. Like, I could buy every single movie out there on Amazon. I could pay for it to rent it or own it. But if I end my Amazon account, if I stop paying the yearly account, then I don't no longer have access to those things that I've already paid for. That is the model they're moving us into. And before I'll get to you in a sec, Ash, but I want to get to where I'm trying to go with this whole thing. So when it comes to this new model of digital payment, and we were talking about tech dates, you're talking about war, we're talking about tech dates and grouping people in, they have to get everybody on the same payment method if they're going to go to this digital stuff. So that's why it's important. And one of the ways that we pay, and it's becoming more and more common, is with your cell phone. I think the cell phone, going back to the Mark of the Beast reference, is a step towards that cannot buy or sell without this thing. And there's a lot of speculation on what this Mark of the Beast is, if it's the vaccine or not. A lot of people have speculated that. Is it going to be an RFID chip that's been around for a long time, or is it going to be something like a smartphone? So I'm just going to throw this out there. This was sent to me by Levi, which is a listener of ours and of David's and of Tony's. This is very, very interesting when we consider them right now doing a big push for internet ID, real ID. If you file your taxes now, you have the ID.me, where you have to provide biometrics and all of your personal information, sometimes fingerprints, blah, 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 to be able to use these certain services. And to try to pull it full circle is the services that they are offering now, getting rid of the legacy. We're going to have to use this system to be able to operate within society. And one of the things is the cell phone. And anyway, Levi sent me this. This is from comparatech.com. It's an article. I'll put it on the screen and read a portion of it. It says, which governments impose SIM card registration laws to collect data on their citizens? And this topic came up because me and him were talking about burner phones. And I didn't understand what a burner phone was. I worked in the commo industry in the Army. I worked in the internet industry for a cable company. When I was in the Army, I kind of transitioned from radio over to NIPRNet, SIPRNet, which is IP router network systems, but I'm not up to speed on cell phones. So he kind of schooled me up on it. A burner phone is basically not one that you buy and throw away. It's one that you can buy and reprogram it to spoof someone else's phone for a certain amount of time before it's kicked off the network. And then you could do it again. Think of it somewhat like using your computer with a VPN to where you can be anonymous. So to get rid of this anonymous stuff, and this, again, will tie back into payment systems and knowing exactly who you are, where you are, how much money you have in the bank, everything. Anyway, this is what he sent me. Nearly 5.8 billion people worldwide have mobile phones, accounting for 70.5% of the entire global population, according to Data Reportal. I guess that's a website. The majority of national governments, over 160 governments, require mandatory SIM card registration. Now, we don't require it here in the US, and I have a map here I'll pull up. So we're not aware of what's going on out there. But you betcha, if it's going on in Europe, it's coming here next. And this is in full effect all over the EU. It's in full effect. The majority, okay, I already read that part. Users must register their real name, personal details to sign up for phone service. Just over 35 countries also require biometrics. Biometrics is facial recognition, fingerprints, maybe voice recognition. We all know what biometrics are. They're anything that you can meter based off of your body. And this is where they're going to go with it. And I was researching Mark of the Beast stuff and chipping people in the early 90s. And that's when I first heard the word biometrics, and I had to look it up. And every single one of these cashless or wireless or marking you or whatever systems included biometrics, and it hasn't changed since then. That has been an integral part of it. This also ties into vaccine records and stuff too, if we can get to it. But let me finish reading, and I'll show you the map and get your take on it, Ashley. More countries are in the process of adding biometric requirements, or they have some requirements, but not for everyone. For example, maybe if you're a tourist, you have to have the biometrics, right? So you're not allowed to just roam the earth anymore. They have to know who you are, where you are, what you're doing, how much money you're spending, everything. And they're going to verify that with a fingerprint, retina scan, facial recognition, something like that. And here's the map. So you could see almost the entire globe, the red here, for those listening on radio. It's almost the entirety of the eastern half of the world, outside of a few countries within the EU, all of South America, Mexico, and there's only like one place down in I think it's still North America, isn't it? Where does South America start? Around Venezuela or somewhere, Ashley?
Yeah,
But
I believe that it's past Mexico.
is it past Mexico? Okay, so really, it's only a few countries within North America that do not require you to register your SIM card. And just think about that. If you have a SIM card registered and you post something to social media that is a no-go for whatever reason, they could just cut your card off. They can cut your phone off. They can cut your bank account off. And especially if that becomes the payment method to tap your phone to something, right? And they have that. They've had that. I had a Sony Ericsson back in Okinawa. It was probably about circa 2005. I got a flip phone, Sony Ericsson. It already had a tap to pay feature I could use at vending machines. That's crazy, isn't it? But they've been slowly moving the Overton window into that digital, number one, digital services. Get rid of somewhere you can go pay cash, and number two, use your cell phone, which is encroaching into eventually what may become a chip or something, a QR code tattoo or something to identify that you are who you say you are, to prevent identity theft. And then there's it talks about the top 14 countries that have it, and it goes into detail, but we're not going to get that deep into it. What do you think about that registration of SIM cards? And I know you read the article because it's sent to you and Karen after Levi sent it to me. What do you think?
So also Levi did say that where he said Central America is part of North America. So
that was what was escaping me, the Central America portion. That's right. That entire region is but anything south of that, it looks like 100% of the countries require that.
Yeah. So I feel like these types of things are, I kind of compare it to death by 1,000 cuts. So it's not one major thing, but I mean, they are major, of course, but they're adding up. So this is when we see really the convergence of the in continued use of, like what you were talking about, payment methods other than cash. All of this tracked, trace, database, all of that stuff. I mean, in this digital world, our calls are being listened to, as was told to us by Edward Snowden, which some people think was a psychological operation in and of itself, which I think is possible. But whether or not it was, we still know that we are being, that our privacy is not respected. Our phone calls are not private. Our texts are not private. Our emails are not private. And our data is not private. And all of these things just make it easier to continue to track what we do and who we associate with. And so in that way, we're really just seeing the creeping of that technocracy really intruding into our lives, as it has been for a very long time. And the smartphones, of course, were really an excellent trick, because if I could go back and know what I know now to the early days of cell phones and things like that, I would, of course, have a different opinion. But at the time, I didn't know. And this is exactly how we do this generational warfare, right? Because after, as Yuri Bezmenov says, one generation to demoralize. And I think that that's applicable for anything else. One generation to get an idea changed from between generations. And that is what a cell phone is. So now we know that we grew up in a time when the internet did not exist. Thank goodness. And kids today will never know that. They will never know a world without YouTube and shorts and, reels and things like that, right? So it's just this slow creep to getting where we're going. And I don't think that we can discount what was said in the article by the World Economic Forum in 2016. It's 2030. I own nothing. I have no privacy, and I've never been happier. So these ideas have been there. And what we see, no matter who is sort of running the show politically or what side is running the show politically, we really don't have disagreement on these things. Now, sure, there's a couple of people who are going to be outspoken every now and again, but by and large, this is the direction that we're moving in. And of course, it's very concerning, right? And I think that the beast of the digital surveillance system is really difficult because it's integrated into everyone's day-to-day life through technology and internet and the way that we do things now. So I find it to be highly concerning, and I'm not sure that I really have a lot of good guidance on that, except for to say, yeah, it's definitely happening. And we have seen, like our friend Bronx Stomper is in the chat right now. And on Saturday, the Knights of the Storm are going to be talking to him. And this is something that Karen and Jason have done quite a bit of work on, which is the data center issue. And Bronk actually had in his town, they were trying to build a data center, and people came together and they prevented that from happening. So this is one way that we can actually fight back, is to have an awareness of what is going on locally and to try to prevent that from happening. Now, that is not to say that they're not figuring this out, that these data centers are very unpopular and are now going by covert means in order to facilitate a data center build in an area. So sometimes this is happening under the nose of the people in the town, and they do not they're not aware that these deals are being made. So it's a very tricky, a tricky environment that we find ourselves in. And I think that we definitely need to cultivate our local awareness with the understanding that sometimes these tricks are being done outside of our purview. And that's the one way that we can fight back. This is something that Karen says all the time. We can use cash. That will help. She says, use it or lose it, which I really like. So we do still have options. We do still have cash. And I think that these things are, that's our way that we can continue to push back on this. And of course, like I said, cultivate awareness of what is happening locally. And again, don't be too hard on yourself for having a difficult time keeping up with all this, because it's the, the war on everything. This is the war on our health, the war on our food, the war on our data, the war on our mind, the hot war, the geopolitical situations that we are witnessing and seeing. So there's a lot going on, and just try to do the best that you can to cultivate awareness and fight back, even if it's in small ways.
Yeah, and I do have some stuff on the data centers. I won't get too deep into it if we get to it today, because I want to save that for this weekend. And Karen will also be talking about glyphosates, which I'm going to really enjoy that conversation. She knows a lot about that. But going back to, the verified cell phone thing, you are who you are, digital ID to get on the internet, which is a big thing right now. I think in Europe, they're starting to do that, where it's to protect the children, right? But we've actually, and we could look at that map again and see where, when it comes to the cell phone portion of having to be registered, like you would register your car for your cell phone, so that they know who you are, which they already know that anyway if you pay for it with a credit card. But there's the burner phone issue. I think they're trying to get around. But we've already started moving our window here, starting with the Patriot Act and TSA. And I got something here. And by the way, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. We'll keep running, but I know Worldwide Christian Radio will be dropping us here in about 2 minutes, almost exactly 2 minutes. So thank you for listening. And if you want to catch the rest of the show, head on over to Rumble or YouTube or Twitter and look up Tony Arterburn. On Rumble, it's America Unplugged channel, but you can look up Tony Arterburn on YouTube or Twitter and catch the rest of the show. But we're going to keep going, right? Right, Ashley?
We're going to keep going.
Okay. So I got this. I looked it up. I'm just kind of looking at where we stand as far as digital ID, or i.e. real ID, which then will become a digital ID, in my opinion. And technically it really is, outside of a few rules that says they can't use the DMV, Department of Motor Vehicle information, is not supposed to be accessible by other government organizations. But I know that that's not true. I know it's not true, because when you get pulled over, they know if your license is suspended. So that's all a beard right there. It's fake. But this is what it says here. As of February 26, 2026, and we all knew this was coming, the TSA accepts digital ID at over 250 U.S. airports for domestic travel. Now, that sounds like it's a good thing, right? These digital IDs must be real ID, which all 50 states now have real ID. They do have some options to not get one. I think that's just if you have an identification card and not a driver's license. I'm pretty sure driver's license has to be real ID, which means you have to bring in all this doggone documentation from cradle to grave to prove that you are who you are. And part of this immigration stuff that we're seeing is part of pushing that agenda. And we've been saying this for a couple years. When these caravans started coming through, we said this is where they're going to go with it. And it started with E-Verify and stuff like that for work. And now we have people driving around with driver's licenses that aren't citizens. We have truck drivers killing people on the roads because they can't read road signs with these H-1B or H-2B visas. A lot of issues that are government created that make us beg for this solution. But that's an interim step. And I really want your take on this. After we get done reading this, Ashley. So everything, the TSA is pushing it, but even for driving, for transportation around the United States legally, it has to be a real ID. It has to be stored in approved platforms. So this is when it goes digital, right? So I'm missing a step here. Let me throw this in. Many of the states that have real ID are also moving to a digital driver's license. So you see how they're incrementally moving it. First, it's a real ID to travel through via TSA, and then it's to drive on the roads. And then now it's moving to a digital form. And I forget how many, last time I did a report on this, it was about a third of the states accept. They say they don't mandate it. At this point, it's a carrot, right? It's not a stick yet. They accept a digital driver's license, which is on your phone, right? And the phone is one step away from a chip in your hand, if you want to think of it that way. But anyway, these are the eligible digital IDs that they are currently taking through TSA if you want to fly. Apple Digital ID, that's on your phone. Google ID Pass on your phone. Clear ID, I'm not sure what that is, but probably an app on your phone. And usually it's a QR code that comes up on your screen. State issued, this is paper wise right here. State issued mobile drivers. No, I guess not. Mobile driver's license. So yeah, a digital driver's license from participating states such as California, Georgia, New York, Texas, and others. And notice the states there, the states that are pushing the digital driver's license first. California, Georgia, which has Atlanta, heavy Democrat, New York, Texas. Texas has been swinging blue for many years now. Here's some key requirements. Digital IDs must be based on a real ID compliant physical ID, which means you have gone and given your cradle to grave information to get this thing. My wife had to go back to the DMV in Georgia like 5 times. And she went there and they're like, well, we need your birth certificate. That's kind of normal for a driver's license. And she had her old driver's license, which she had provided this for, but they wouldn't take that because it didn't have the gold star on it, right? We know what a gold star is. Come on, man. But she went, got her birth certificate. She got our marriage certificate. So she was married once before. So she had her original name. And then on our marriage certificate, it actually acknowledges her maiden name, her prior married name, and then her new name, which is Barker. That should say it all. It's an official document. No, heck no. She had to go back and she had to go through a bunch of hoops to order and have it rushed out because she needed to go to work. She had a job at the time and she needed her driver's license to be good. So she had to rush from the courthouse back here in Rolla, Missouri for her marriage certificate and her divorce certificate, because she had lost that stuff over the years. So they talk about voter ID being something hard for minorities to get. Come on. It's hard for anybody to get these documents if they don't have the money, but you can't go to work. You can't drive without this stuff. So I don't know. Anyway, I'll go on. It has to be based on real ID. Physical acceptable ID must still be carried at all times, even when using digital ID. So now you have to have your papers on you too, not just your QR code, but your papers. I guess to prove it's not fake. But that's where the biometrics will come in. with the registered phones. See, that's what I'm trying to get to. Right now, if you're going to use the digital driver's license on your phone or whatever ID is on your phone with your Apple, Google, whatever ID, you still need to have your physical, which is a pain in the butt. So why not have a fingerprint or a facial scan to verify that's you on your phone? Do you see what I'm getting at? How they're moving it slowly into a one ID to rule them all. And then last thing I'll say before I hand it over to you, Ashley, these are the states with digital ID programs. I'm going to read them off so you can see how many, and this is a lot more than when I reported it last. Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Georgia, Hawaii, Illinois, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Montana, New Mexico, New York, North Dakota, Ohio, Puerto Rico. I didn't know Puerto Rico is a state, but okay. Utah, Virginia, West Virginia, and then it says and others. So there's more than that. I don't know. What's your thoughts on this? We look good on the map as far as not having to have a registered cell phone, but as they move this stuff to our phone, in order to not have to carry that paperwork on us additionally, I think that we're going to go there. Your thoughts, Ash?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a violation of our constitutional rights and our ability to move about freely. And I believe that ultimately it is not only to continue to study people by stealing their data and data tracking. I think that is a huge piece of the puzzle, because the more information they have and the more information that they can collate, they can use this for minority report style behavior analysis. So I think that that is an angle. And of course, the control mechanism when people are being watched, it does affect the people that know that. And I think that as far as the control mechanism, it also eventually, and we've discussed this many times, but the social credit score, it is very possible that these things eventually are all going to be amalgamated into one thing, the entity, which is going to be the ID, the cell phone, the internet access, the banking access, shopping access, travel access, etc. And we realize that there are potential threats to us. For example, whenever we were in during the pandemic times, and some people did not want to take a particular injection, and we saw the social element of the shunning that was taking place and the division that this caused in families and the damage that it did to individuals who were ostracized about their decision. But we also can recognize that that is the perfect situation where we would have that decision for our own personal autonomy to be weaponized against us. So if once these control mechanisms are all in place, then of course that's when restrictions based on behavior can begin happening, because we know that we have a very a really comprehensive spy setup happening. Basically, so we have cameras, we have facial recognition, we have the things that are scanning your cars, all of these things. And so that information is all going to be readily accessible and used in order to track behavior and potentially shun people who decide not to participate in X, Y, or Z. And this could be also used as punishment, what you say on social media. That is, in my opinion, something that we're already starting to see. We see people saying things that were not said in, let's say, like the last decade, that are starting to kind of trend. They're starting to gain traction. It's a really hot potato subject. And I call it controlled noticing. So I don't necessarily fully understand the reason that these accounts and these people saying these things are being allowed to trend, unless it is going to be tied in. This is pure speculation on my part, tied in with your behavioral score, with your social credit score, with cracking down on your free speech. But all of these things, very unfortunately, are really tied together through technology, which is all of our data, our reactions to certain news stories, what you like, what comments you leave, what you think on certain political and geopolitical and social issues, as well as where you go, how you spend your money, where you buy food. All of these things are really important, and I think are at play in an effort for the entity to control and ultimately to be able to punish you with not allowing you access to these vital things eventually.
And yeah, and that's a good segue right there, because I have a few video clips I'm going to play where already we could see that they are digitizing us, even though we may not know it. But the carrot portion has been out there for a while. The carrot, you're going to get these certain benefits. It's going to be easier for you, yada, yada, yada. But you can still use your own, your paper stuff, even though that's all digitally stored. But they're going to go away from that. But I don't know. Do you want to take a second pause before I play this and give shout outs?
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Anyway, we've got, let's go ahead into the Rumble. We've got Levi Narrowgate is there. He provided the one article. Thank you for that, Levi. That was interesting conversation we had. One Big Blue Hog. Good to see you. Brandon Bennett. Always good to see BB out there. I'm Marty had said, let me roll down to the comment. I'm Marty's got to renew the driver's license in March. It might get interesting. Yes, it might. Don't Obey is in there. Sweets is in there. Sweets, feel free to drop any links. I know you're the link master. Who else? I think that's all we have over on Rumble right now. Of course, Karen Carpenter's in there. She would have been on with us, but she has some a little rugrat running around that she's got to watch, and I understand that. I think that's everybody there. And then over on see, I can see the YouTube comments. I saw Bronx Stomper was in there. You'd said that earlier. Angel Blue 9224.
That's our friend Cecilia.
Oh, that's Cecilia. Hey, what's up, Cecilia? Good to see you. And I don't think I saw you were in there, Ashley.
We had Matt BH7 as well.
Nice. Good stuff. And I don't see anybody else. But anyway, let me go ahead and play a couple videos, because, what I'm trying to build here is to show how much of the world has already gone to this digital ID system, this mark of the beast system, which it'll likely be part of it anyway. I won't say that would be the mark, but it'd be part of it, I believe, because it talks about not being able to buy or sell. And we're going to not be able to buy or sell without having to get into this system if cash goes away. And if somebody's not going to take my, 90% silver dollar here for a loaf of bread, which now would probably buy a truckload of bread. But anyway, let me go ahead and play these. This is some of the carrot and stick stuff. Let me add to stage, mute myself, and we will.
Another place that India leads, but there's a lot more that all of you can be involved in driving forward, is this digital public infrastructure. No country is more able to take government benefits and get them out efficiently and effectively to their citizens than India. You would have expected rich countries or others to do that, but in fact, they did not. And so that basic structure that starts with identity and bank accounts and payments is just foundational. And as part of this visit, I'm now seeing how that foundation is being built out in agriculture with profiles of farmers to understand what they need and give them
Real quick, I did want to mention the data collection portion of it. He kind of let it slip there, a data collection portion of it, and that's going to tie into a carbon credit score, as you were talking about, a social credit score, which will partially be based off of how much carbon you're using and what you're saying online. So he's kind of, when Bill Gates talks, he lets it slip. He always lets it slip. I don't know if it's intentional, if it's a Freudian slip, or he's kind of like throwing it in our face and subtly telling us what's coming. You have any thoughts on that before I continue, Ashley?
Definitely. I think it's on purpose. I think that things like this are, it's another stone in the path, essentially, for people like Bill Gates, who appear to be immune from any type of basically, what's the word? But like from the laws, essentially, whether that is his behavior of what we have seen come out as far as the e-files recently, or some of the other things that he's been involved in. And it's hard really for us to know what's what, but we have heard of him being involved in vaccine programs in Africa and India where people were severely injured and really there was no recourse for those children and people were lied to about the actual goal of those vaccines. So we really have him being tied to experimenting on humans. Of course, we know he's very intimately involved in the mRNA injections that came out in very late 2020 and 2021. So I definitely think that people like this, who are very well connected and who appear to be above the law, are planting seeds. And part of this is predictive programming or priming the pump or moving the Overton window. But I definitely think that these are important for them to sort of spell it out. And why wouldn't he spell it out? He has been completely immune from any type of backlash, with the exception of he did get a couple of pies to the face a while back. He did lose a lot of his fortune, supposedly, in his divorce with Melinda French Gates, and due to his connection, supposedly, with Mr. Epstein. And when he posts something on social media, he is so roundly disliked that comments are always off. Because people would absolutely rip him a new one in the comments, and they have been robbed of that. And they also, as we know, they have removed in a lot of places the ability to show the amount of dislikes. And I don't like bullying people online, especially regular people, but even celebrities. But I do think that people like Bill Gates could use as much bullying as we possibly could throw at him. But these limitations have been put in place for that very reason. So I do think that him letting the cat out of the bag is on purpose, and that they are stating their intent. And he's been very open about making money off of vaccines and injections. And we know that he is a huge contributor to the World Health Organization, that he has his own health organization that he's very intimately involved in, Gavi, and that they also have the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And a lot of their rhetoric sounds very eugenicist, which of course ties in with what we did see from the e-files. So long-winded way to answer your question, Jason, I think it's intentional.
Yeah, and he's on record recently after the whole mRNA jab rollout, talked about how profitable that investment was for him. He's also let it slip that through vaccination, we can reduce world population. That's been slipped many times. And there was a third one I was thinking of that I can't think of right now. But yeah, he has definitely let a lot of things slip, and he has a little snarky look on his face. Oh, and I would say, okay, bullying, there's a difference between bullying and criticism. So I know people can be pretty harsh online, but he deserves to be criticized. The guy drops millions upon millions of mosquitoes, genetically modified mosquitoes, on major populations without their knowledge or consent. And who knows what that's doing now. He's part of this push for the alpha-gal syndrome, to be, to breed ticks outside of the Lone Star tick. There's two other tick species that exist more north that they're trying to get this alpha-gal syndrome for them to be able to carry that, so people will get bit by these ticks, no longer can eat red meat. And he profits off that, because if you can't eat red meat, you're going to eat his fake meat. So there's a lot of reasons to criticize him. And the fact that we can't get a public consensus because these comments and stuff are turned off, we can't get a finger on the pulse of what the people want. It's just going to be done without their consent or even their knowledge in some cases. So, I don't mind. I don't like bullying people either. We've got people on our show that can't comment because they have bullied. Come back and be nice and have an exchange of ideas, free speech, real free speech, and you can come back. But anyway, let me let this run some more. And I got a couple other videos about where this is going. Yeah, we really went over the hour, didn't we?
Device built out with health records so that we can help people not only with infectious diseases, but the challenge that's coming in the future with the growth of the non-communicable diseases being a huge thing. And
what challenge that's coming in the future? That's what I'm saying. He lets it slip. He's on record for saying it's not if, but when there's a next global pandemic. And he snarks about that too. So it might be a planned demic, but let me keep it going.
And that digital public infrastructure will help us with these climate problems. I was in Odisha yesterday and
okay, so I'll stop it there. Again, it comes down to the climate thing. Everything's climate. So you know it's going to have a carbon footprint attached. It's going to have all your medical records. It's there to help you for the next pandemic that happens, whether it's accidental or created, or completely fictitious. So that's where we're going with that. And all this data that they're collecting is not so you can drive or fly. The reason I showed that is they want to tie it into everything, if that makes sense. And here it is right here. A digital ID system can help vaccination deployment, but should never be a barrier to access. So they're still going to vaccinate you, but they want to push for you to have an ID as a vaccine passport. And that'll likely be like it was before to be able to travel. And I'll read this real quick. Countries will have a multitude of ID systems and population databases that can help. Some countries, such as the UK, can use their universal and digitized health insurance registries, which will be tied to your payment method and your driver's license and everything else. It will be tied together if it's not already. That's me saying that. That's not the article. Other countries may try to reuse data from different sources, such as employers and local governments. Most countries, especially developing ones, must look to alternatives because their databases are not complete, accurate, nor standard enough, as revealed when countries try to use a database to rapidly scale up or introduce new emergency social assistance programs last year. So again, they're making this like this is a benefit to you. And one thing I wanted to point out about what I just read there, if they can combine the databases, employers, local governments, health databases, stuff like that, they can already do that. And I won't get into that today because we don't have time, but I was going to talk about the data centers and how everything is being outsourced. So a hospital no longer has your data on their server. It's on the cloud, which is the cloud is not real. It's not like in the sky, right? It is physical locations on ground. And, my health data may be stored right next to my driver's license data, which is right next to my financial data. And Palantir runs all that. You think that they don't have the ability to connect the dots and make an overall picture digital twin of you? So this is kind of where we're going with this ID stuff when everything's tied in. And then you start throwing on top of that, when you're using it as a purchase method, it's tracking how many candy bars you bought, how many charcoal briquettes you bought for your weekend barbecue, how much meat did you buy. That will all be sorted through, coalesced, or collated, or however you want to say it. It'll be put together by AI to determine what your worth is as a human. Are you a net carbon drain? Should you be taxed? Should you be allowed to buy something? Should you be allowed to travel? That's where this is all going. I'll give you the floor there, Ashley, for a bit, whatever you want to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you have said it pretty well, that this is going to be, it's a play at controlling every type of activity that humans have, which is travel, access to food, access to water, access to housing, access to medical care, access to the internet in general, access to your own money. Like this is definitely the play of these pieces coming together. Now, I don't know that they will be successful, but it is perhaps they will be. And that is, I believe, very unfortunately, part of being in this earthly realm, that we have people that are in control who do not have the best interests of humanity at heart. And I would point to the saying that everything cannot just be a mistake or bad policy, because if it was, or incompetence, if it was, it would break our way every now and again. But I think that we see the control grid and the digital surveillance state continue to come up.
Yeah, and I will say that Cecilia, right? That's Cecilia again. Says, please say who is behind Palantir. People need to know. our VP. I think he is a shareholder there, isn't he? I believe.
Well, I'm sure that he probably is, and absolutely, JD Vance was an acolyte and mentored by Peter Thiel. So he's very well connected to the surveillance state and what we see happening right now. And it's a huge net, it's a huge web, a huge net, however you want to say it. So yes, Palantir and Peter Thiel are part of this. And then of course we have JD Vance being this associate and mentored by Peter Thiel. They have connections with Mr. Epstein, and they also have a huge amount of power and say over what is currently happening in our own country. They're obviously associated with Donald Trump, and they are associated with Larry Ellison. Larry Ellison is, he's very important in media. He has his company Oracle. The first customer of them was the Central Intelligence Agency. Now he's working with President Trump and this administration on Project Stargate, which is a $500 billion project for AI and data centers. And then he also said something really horrific when this was first announced, which was like at the beginning of 2025. And he was talking about how, for example, police officers would have their body cameras all of the time. Even if they went to the restroom, they could request for that to be turned off when they go to the restroom, but it actually still does not stop recording. So and he was saying this like it's a good thing. Now, I know that there are people who are advocates for body cams on police officers, and I'm not arguing against that. I would ask the question, if it actually made people safer and if it was actually utilized to help people who were potential victims of police malfeasance. I don't know the answer to that, and I'm not saying that I do, but I have questions about whether that actually has helped civilians be less brutalized or to help make them safer. I'm not sure. But then we have the rhetoric that was by Larry Ellison, that body cam would actually never turn off. And he was also talking about how they would be able to cure cancer and come up with individualized vaccines with the AI program that they are talking about. So we're really seeing the convergence of all of these things. And sometimes maybe they bother, like in the case of Larry Ellison, to try to spin it like it's a good thing for us. But obviously there are some well-worn causes for cancer. Now, I'm not saying the mystery has been totally cracked, but there has been a lot of things that indicate that certain things cause cancer. And if really that was the interest, then those things would be addressed. Roundup being one of many, 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 many examples. So it's not about our health. It is not about making us safer. It's not about curing cancer with a custom AI mRNA injection. This is about the surveillance state for sure.
Well, one thing to note, I want to talk about safety because, I'm a 2A advocate. And I'll tell you right now, police do absolutely zero or minimal to make people safe. They show up after a crime has been committed and they take a report and then they investigate. So if they wanted to argue about, this mass surveillance, and let's look at the Nancy Guthrie case. It's been going on for almost 2 freaking months now, right? It didn't help them there, right? Actually, I think there's something more behind that, but we will save that for another day. But the mass surveillance is not for your safety. When catastrophe is seconds away, police are minutes away. So it's on you to protect your own family. Okay, I do understand if somebody's going 200 miles an hour down the road and they get pulled over and ticketed or taken to jail, that's taking that threat off the road. That's one way that they can increase safety. But this mass surveillance is not providing any safety whatsoever. If they want to provide safety because of criminals out there, number one, they'd stop letting people out that are obviously mentally deranged or whatever. If you're not, basically, if you can't own a gun because you're that much of a threat, you shouldn't be on the street. You should be in a mental institution getting help, or you should be locked away until such time as you've paid your debt to society and are no longer a threat. So that's one problem, is our judicial system. And the other problem is, and this is what they're playing, again, feeding into the ID thing where they want us all to prove who we are. They literally, our government, our federal government, literally coerced, paid for, and carted people here from other nations that sometimes we cause to be a problem, and then they're now refugees, and we bring them over, then we pay them to be here, we incentivize them, and there's a lot of fraud involved where they're making millions of dollars. We've all seen it on the news, but now it's up to you and I to prove who we are for our own safety. Well, I'm not hating on these people for being here. Me and Billy have talked about this. These people were asked to come here, so we need to understand that as well. But we could deal with the welfare system. We can deal with those who do commit crimes and put them away or deport them. I'm not in favor of deportation. If you commit a crime, you need to do the time, because if I deport you, you're just going to come back here anyway. And now we got, how many times have we seen a murder or a rape or something, and they said this guy's been deported 5 or 6 times? Well, the problem isn't that he's an immigrant. The problem is that he's a criminal. Why can't we lock him up? So those are the problems we need to fix. But what they're really trying to do is make us prove that we're good people to make everything safer, when the problem is evident. The problems are evident. Deal with the problems. I don't know. I'm going on a big rant there. I get off on that because it's so easy, Ashley. It is so easy to see how to fix some of these problems that were government created problems. But the only solution that they offer us is that we need more control over us, the law-abiding citizen.
Right. And that's the usual, that's what I think, is that no matter what party is in control, what we're really seeing is that we have a system that is not in the interest of American people. And yeah, there are a lot of issues, but there are some common sense ways that can be used to address these issues. And we also, in manufacturing, for example, there is a very high emphasis on increased productivity, on addressing issues that have come up and why they have come up. And oftentimes, if in manufacturing, if you are, if some big mistake happens, something known as a root cause analysis has to be done. And that means digging into the root cause. And that is very common sense in manufacturing or in any other area, for us to identify where a failure or critical failure ended up happening, for us to make sure that it doesn't happen again. That is what you need to do in business, because you want to make sure that you're getting in front of and learning from all of these mistakes and potential quality issues that are happening. But what we don't see that same type of rhetoric happening in the political, socio-political, geopolitical landscape. We do not see root cause analysis. And if we were to see root cause analysis, it would expose so much rotten corruption as far back as you possibly could imagine. That's why you never get it. That's why we never get a real root cause analysis to what is happening, what actually caused this problem, and how could it actually be addressed and prevented from happening again. That's what we need. And we do have this, this merging of what people are calling fascism in today's day and time, but this government business merging. But what we don't see is the government side of things having responsibility for truly identifying the cause. So what we get is a lot of lies, excuse me, a lot of obfuscation of the truth. We get propaganda, we get half truths, and we get information warfare. So these things are coming together that make it really difficult to even identify. And of course, this is used as a way to keep people divided and fighting as well. So when you never address the truth and you never address a true root cause, and you have true facts in the way that you're supposed to do in a court of law, then it keeps people fighting and confused and chaos and mayhem. And circling back to from the chaos thing, that is a Machiavellian tactic to keep people confused. Chaos is a ladder for people who have plans that are not for the benefit of the regular people or the many, or however you want to say that.
So I like a lot of what you just said there. And one thing I want to talk about real quick before I play, I got a couple more videos to play, but this is kind of a hot button issue for me as well. And Tony Arterburn would be well aware of this, but when you run a military operation or a training event or whatever, even police police events like a raid or something, like a SWAT raid or whatever, there's what's called a hot wash. A hot wash is where when the operation is over, you kind of go through a quick, what did everybody observe, right? But then you do a formal AAR, which is called an after action review. So in the after action review, the basic questions are what was supposed to happen? And you talk about, okay, what was our mission? What was our goal? What actually did happen is the second question. So then you go over what the outcome was. Did you do what you were intended to do? And then the third question is, what can we do better next time? So I know, just thinking of this being prior military, retired 20 years Army, we have the federal government has this stuff in place to be able to look at the programs that they have and be able to conduct these after action reviews and improve, but they don't. It just gets worse and worse and worse. So to me, that tells me it's not that they don't have the methods to improve. They just don't want to improve. And that falls into what your chaos ladder thing that you talked about. Absolutely. 100%. I agree with that. Ashley, they want the chaos. In fact, we brought the chaos over here through the Biden administration. And I don't know, Trump says he's closed the borders off. I don't know that that's true or not. I haven't had anybody that I know go down there and physically observe it. But what I can say is what Trump is doing right now is climbing that ladder of chaos that was put in place by Biden, that was paid for by you and I. And if people can get that concept of we create the problem and now we get people outraged, and then there's that internal division amongst the United States citizens, being divided over race, color, sex, everything they're divided over. And this is just one more thing. Let's just take somebody who appears to be maybe not from this country because of the way they look and hate on them. And then you have your paid agitators as well. We had that guy that was going to come on that we're not going to have on, was Crowds for Anything CEO or something like that. And literally they are hired to round people up to pay them to go to these events to cause division within our nation, within cities. So you makes you wonder, all of these riots, so, we can call them peaceful protests, mostly peaceful protests, riots, whatever you want to call them. How much of it's organic of people who are there for a cause? How much of it is people who are paid to be there to push a narrative? And how much of it is just people out there to record it and try to get a viral video? You got to keep that, in your mind as we're trying to be divided. But I went long-winded there again. But let me run a couple of videos and get your take on these as well. Going back to the ID thing, and trust me, if the digital ID and this, what I would consider to be another step forward towards the mark of the beast, with digital ID, internet ID, real ID, all this other stuff, if it was a voluntary thing, go ahead. I don't care. I'll warn you about it, but don't force me to do it. But we are going to be forced to do it through planned obsolescence. And I talk a lot about planned obsolescence. I'm going through it right now with my computer systems, where if I want to avoid using AI as much as possible, I have to stay on an old operating system because it's so embedded in Windows 11. There are ways, though, I looked it up, there are ways to turn that off. But by nature, your Windows operating system and Windows 10 is out of support now. So Windows 11 is it. If you have Windows 10, I think you can get the extended support up until I think November or something of this year. I have it here on one of the tabs, but we won't go into that. But you're going to be forced to use something that is going to record everything you do. And the reason I'm trying to avoid AI is because I understand that there's a data centers and stuff out there, and that's a whole nother conversation how we really can't even avoid it, but we could do what we can. But it's going to be embedded in everything. You do a Google search, you go even on Brave search, it comes up with an AI overview, which means anytime you do anything online, you save something, you record a video, you send an email, these are feeding the data centers because that's what the cloud is. And these data centers are sucking up so much freaking water to keep them cool. So anyway, like I said, I don't want to go deep into that. I want to save that for Saturday. And we'll talk about the glyphosates on Saturday too. Karen's got some stuff. But I'll just run these videos and then get your take on what it is. Here's the first one. Let me mute myself.
Imagine if you do social media, you have to use your digital ID, so you're not anonymous, and that ID is also tied to your banking. So let's say that we get a law like they have in England right now, where it's illegal to have hate speech on your social media. And they've been arresting like 30, 40, 50 people a day since they enacted this law in the UK. Like one guy he vacationed in the US, did some target shooting with shotguns, had a snapshot of him holding a shotgun. And when he went back to England, he was arrested at the airport for violating this hate speech social media law. So imagine they know you did that because your digital ID is attached to it, and then they fine you, but since it's tied to your bank account, they just take the money out of your account. So they don't send you a fine and then let you, contest it in court or anything. They just take the money. Or they prevent you from using your account for 5 days. Imagine if you do social media.
All right, Ashley, I'm actually going to pause it there because I'm sure you probably have some stuff to add to that. We saw it in Canada, didn't we? In real time.
Yeah. And I think that it's just one more example of like what we have been talking about, of the desire to weaponize essentially everything that you think or do in order to gain your compliance for the system. I think that that's ultimately what it's about, and they don't want anonymity online. They don't want people to be able to speak out. We have seen people on either side of a message be arrested or, prosecuted with a heavier hand than we would expect for protesting. People have been made examples out of. So even if you're someone who doesn't believe that all of that happened, fair enough, but the example was made, the precedent was set for the population. So we have seen the continued crackdown on free speech, which is something that that's why I believe the controlled noticing is part of that as well. I think that the free speech online and the anonymity online is a huge piece of this, but ultimately it's all part of the control grid of controlling behaviors and gaining compliance and having a something really important to hold over your head in order to ensure your compliance to the system, the entity, whatever you want to describe it as.
Yeah, and that's why I was saying that, if this was an optional thing for convenience and people wanted to opt into it, that's one thing. But through planned obsolescence, they're going to force us all into it. I want to show, I'm actually going to go out of order here. I'm going to show this one video about showing the convenience of having everything tied into one ID and your bank account. And then I want to show how the forcing that's going to end on is the forcing of people now into this system, even when they're an infant now. So I'm going to go ahead and play this real quick. Let me throw it up. Mute myself.
That's me stuffing my pockets at an Amazon Go store. But before you make any assumptions, you should know this. This is exactly what you're supposed to do here. Because at this store, there are no cashiers. And whatever you walk out with, you're just charged automatically.
Today I've come to the Amazon Go store, and I'm the only one here because nobody really works here. Here's how it works.
The retail store uses cameras and weight to know if an item was taken, and then associate that item with your wallet. It does this by using cameras and weight sensors to track you as you move around the store. It's also known as just walk out technology, which includes computer vision, sensor function, and deep learning.
And anytime you put something back, it also knows. So no matter what you grab while you're in the store and whatever you put back, it just knows. And it's only when you exit that you're actually charged for what you bought.
All right. So a lot of key things to take away from this. Number one, that's kind of creepy that you are being monitored every little motion movement you make. If you had like somebody walking around with a notepad following you, just think about that. If you just had some random stranger walking around watching you 24/7 with a notepad, taking notes of everything you did, that would be creepy, right? That's what our government is doing. They're creepy, right? The other thing is that the mass amount of surveillance that has to be there for that to happen, which is actually happening on the streets right now with flock systems and whatnot. And it was mentioned in the comments, and we talked about even like the Nancy Guthrie case, I'll jump to that real quick. She had one of those Ring cameras or something like that, or Nest camera. I think it was Nest was the system she had, but she didn't have the subscription. Well, come to find out, even if you don't have the subscription, and I actually unplugged mine because I have a system here that I run offline. Come to find out, they actually still store that stuff online, and that came out through this case. But the narrative they're trying to spin is that maybe these systems should all be tied together. And we reported on this last week, I think it was, on how they're actually pushing to have all the different, your Alexas, your Nest, your Ring, all these things to be tied together as one thing and then tied into the Flock system. So this extends outside of this store. They're painting it as a good thing, convenience and stuff like that. But really, it's really just in your life 24/7. And then when are they going to add biometrics to it? And I got the next clip I have to play will show that. But before I move on, what are your thoughts on that? No people working in the store thing, and it just charges. I mean, how many times will it mischarge you? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Don't go. Do not give places like that your business, is the best advice. Now, what happens if you don't have a choice? I don't have the answer to that. We hear about these concepts of food deserts and places where people don't have access to a grocery store where they can get actual healthy food and things like that. So I think that if you can avoid places like that, avoid at all costs. Do not give them your business. I'm not someone who necessarily thinks that they need money from you to have their business. So a lot of people think because financial non-compliance or lack of financial support previously could have been a method that didn't work. But now, when these businesses such as Amazon, who owns Whole Food, who owns like the cleaning robot, who like whatever else that they have, when you have that these places are propped up by government funds and government subsidies. So I don't know that it would prevent them from existing, but I think that the best course of action is to avoid as much as humanly possible if you can.
So Levi here in Rumble, he says Sam's Club now has pass-through scanning for your cart, and you don't need to go to a register. And I will say this. Here. Sorry, I had to cough there. Still getting over this cold. My local, was it Home Depot? Oh, no, it's Lowe's. We don't have Home Depot. We have Lowe's here. It's the only place I have to go to get lumber, unless I want to drive 30, 40 minutes one way or the other up the highway or down the highway. They have completely removed all registers. It is 100% self-checkout. What I can do though is I can go down to the lumber department where people pull their trucks up and load up plywood and stuff. They still have a register there. So those are small things you can do, and you can pay in cash there as well. So if we're forced into this, which we are going to be forced into it, my belief is we will be forced into it. And again, this is going cashless, digital ID. That's the theme of the show today. And Mark of the Beast, if you want to think it's the Mark of the Beast. You make your own conclusions on that. I would just say go read chapter 13 and tell me if what it says there isn't potentially playing out right now. But anyway, I'm going to play this last clip. This is the last one I have, Ashley. I'm not going to get into any more topics. I'll save it for another day when it comes to the data centers and the AI centers. I know we touched on that a little bit last week, but I had some more stuff to put on it. But we'll save that for another time. So what I got here is I think it's Comcast. Yeah, Comcast Business. I keep seeing this commercial come up when I'm watching something on DirecTV, which I don't normally do, but it's coming up a lot. This is being pushed heavily, and this requires data centers for this to happen. It requires interconnectivity of multiple different systems, which is what we talked about with Palantir. These things are all stored either on the same server area or whatever server farm, or multiple across the nation that are highly connected, which if we had more time, I would get into the 5G and 6G, how that's not really for you. That is for this system that they're putting in, so that these data centers, this cloud, if you will, where things are stored, will have instant access. So literally you can have, and I will real quick before I move on. I had some stats here. if I can pull it up. Here, I'll pull the map up for those watching. We're not on radio anymore. So yeah, these are the data centers. I've used this map quite a bit. And it was, okay, here we go. I just got a recent count. I didn't get a count last time I reported on this, a current count. But as of early 2026, which is now, there are approximately 10,506 active data centers globally. Now, these are the data centers. This is just your storage. This isn't necessarily the AI. This is just the data storage. So 10,500 data centers globally, according to the latest available data. And we know they're going in faster and faster. The United States leads the world with 5,427. So we are half of the world's data centers are here inside the United States. Now, how do you connect those in real time? You do that with 6G. I think even Starlink wouldn't be fast enough. It may be a portion of it, but there's still a little bit of latency there. So I don't know. I think the 6G is going to be quicker because it's terrestrial. That's what it's going in for. And nobody cares about the health effects. That was a complete sidebar. Let me play this last video and I'll get all your comments there. I'll find back where I was. Where was I? I lost my place, Ashley. Here it is. Okay, so going back to the not opting in, just being forced in. This is a Comcast commercial I keep seeing. I finally found a copy of it online. And I think it might be dubbed with somebody. I don't think it's the actual audio of the commercial. I think somebody else did it. But anyway, let me go ahead and play it. I'll mute myself so we don't get an echo.
Comcast Business doesn't just power businesses. We help turn them into logistics mastering, supply chain transforming, seamlessly restocking, frictionless paying.
Right there, frictionless paying. And if you're listening later on audio, they're actually showing somebody walk right past something that looks like a cell phone, but it's like a point of sales, and they just look at it and it checks them out. So there's your biometrics right there. And this is Comcast. It used to be a cable company. All right, let me keep it going.
Market tracking, client servicing, cyber securing.
Cyber securing, that means they're going to know everything about everybody for your protection, for to prevent or ward off identity theft, which, by the way, I had an aunt that worked for Chase for well over a decade, maybe almost 2 decades. And part of their training was that 90+% of identity theft is actually from people that work at a bank or a credit card company. They take your information. So this idea that people's identities are being stolen through hacking, yes, it happens, but is it to the scale that we think it is? No, it's not. I mean, why would somebody want to hack me? If they were that good, they would hack Bill Gates. You know what I'm saying? So it's something to think about. Is this a real problem or a perceived problem to implement a solution? And almost done, Ash. Let it go some more.
Poke bowl ordering, quickly customizing. Oh, dang, that looks good. Okay, where was I? Right. Line skipping, mobile access granting, self-check outing, effortless entering, seat ordering, hot diggity dogging, buzzer beating, patient scanning, data managing.
This was why I wanted to show this video. I've been wanting to show it for a few weeks now. You have a baby right now, and you know, for those listening on audio, if you have a birth certificate, a lot of times they'll put the baby's footprints on there with ink. Right here in this video that's showing, they're scanning it into a database, into a computer. So that's what I'm getting at right now. That poor baby is not able to opt out of being put as part of their database. And that's where we're going. And they're forcing us there with this real ID, digital ID. It's to save the children. Oh, you can't, because there's porn sites out there. I'm telling you right now, I worked in IT for a long time, a long, long time. If they wanted to shut down porn sites, they can. Absolutely can. If North Korea can cut off access to certain things because of IP for their network, their pool of ranges of IPs, and they find ways to block VPNs, they can do it. We can do it. They don't want to do it because they want the problem to implement the solution. Now, let me finish, Ashley, and then I'll shut my mouth.
Look at those little toes. Welcome to the worlding, life-changing, modern businesses, leading connectivity and networking, advanced cybersecurity, expert partnership, powering the engine of modern business, Comcast Business.
All right, now your breakdown of all that, Ash.
Well, it's completely dystopian. And I think that is, we've seen this type of dystopian surveillance state in many movies and books. And there's a meme out there that talks about You Are Here, and it's a convergence of 1984 and Brave New World and Soylent Green and Fahrenheit. I think is it Fahrenheit 411. But I think that is what we are seeing here, and part of this is goals for them, and part of this is propaganda and predictive programming to get you used to the idea. For most people, reality is not this way yet, but that is the projection. And things like this have been the pieces have been falling into place for a very long time. For example, in the hospital. So you wanted to give the example of the baby in the hospital and the registration of them scanning the foot, which reminded me of the palm scan that has to, that some people, for your licensure, for example, in a certain state for your trade, I'll give you an example. When I moved back to North Carolina and I had to get my massage therapy license for this state, you have to take your test that you can get your certification, that's based on, it's called the NBLEX. And in order to take the test, you have to do a palm scan. What choice do you have? If you want to work in the trade that you are trained in, you have to do that. And that is exactly what the foot scan of the baby reminded me of. Go ahead, Jason.
Oh, I was just going to caveat and say, and that's what they set that precedent during COVID. If you wanted to continue working your job, you had to get, the shot and have the passport to prove it. If you wanted to do X, Y, and Z.
Forced,
so
forced compliance for you to be able to make money and work or whatever. But that's what that reminded me of. So the continuation of really getting all of this data on newborns. And of course, people are very worried about their newborn babies, and they trust, in most cases, the medical system. So they want to do everything that they can, and they believe them. And we can see with the introduction of Rockefeller medicine and really the sundowning of people having medical providers in their own community or having midwives in their own community. And we saw the propaganda campaign against midwives, against birthing at home, things like this, in the name of saving mother and baby more often in this very sterile environment, but also what came out of regulations. So now, for example, if someone made the decision that they wanted to do a home water birth or have a home birth with their midwife, many states have regulations against this. It's the same way for homeschooling. Like, some states are more friendly to people that choose to homeschool. They offer a lot more freedom. And some states are very restrictive on homeschooling. And it's the same thing, that some states are very restrictive on being able to have your own birth at home. But if you think about it, people for most of the entire existence on this earth have been able to have the ability to decide where they want to try to have their child and the care that they want to provide. But now we are getting this legal framework. And then again, we see that really the screw being tightened when it comes to children attending public school, because schools will have vaccine mandates for children. So you cannot attend unless you ABC XYZ. And so they also, as we know, they really push a certain amount of vaccines at every single age. And when a child is born, they recommend a vitamin K injection. The medicine in the eyes that is supposed to prevent, in case the mother has an STD, which they already know that she does or does not, based on medical testing leading up to that. And then, of course, the hepatitis vaccine that we talked about. This is right from the get-go. And they try to strong arm people into getting this done, even though it's not technically legally required. It may be legally required for school, but they use the fear and concern that people have for their newborn baby to gain compliance. So not only is this like this convergence of Rockefeller medicine and the new technocratic ID state, but it also is not necessarily, in my opinion, a sound path to health for your child. But people don't know that.
We need to get Dr. LaGuardia back on. I don't think you've been on with us have you been on with us when we
Yep.
interviewed him?
Yep,
Okay.
couple times.
We need to do that again. I've been thinking about that lately to see if there's any developments on detoxing and things like that. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get us kind of wrapped up. I know we're hitting on 2 hours right now. I'd be remiss not to mention Tony's business. So let me go ahead and pull it up here. You can go to wisewolf.gold. If you wanted to see Tony's work as far as his podcast and stuff, go to what is it, Arterburn.news or TonyArterburn.news, I think. I'm stupid for not having it up here. I should have thought ahead of time, but you can find him. He's got links on the different social media sites. But anyway, so our gold, our yellow metal is up at 51.80 at this current moment. And by the way, you can check the current prices in real time on Tony's site at wisewolf.gold. And the white metal silver up at 87.41 at this given moment. And if you want to do like I do, I did a purchase with him at one point, but I do a monthly thing, which is the Wolf Pack. And the Wolf Pack is just kind of a buyer's club where if you got 120, I think 50 is the smallest. Actually, there's 35 for the Wolf Cub, but 50 is the smallest. I upped it to 125 because of the prices. If you want to get more, I went to the 125, but you got to go to the Wolf Pack. There it is right here. Join Wolf Pack. You can click on that and you could do a one-time payment. So if you wanted to gift somebody $125 worth of some precious metals for like say Christmas or something, and I do that every year, you could do that, or you could do a monthly. And what he does is he takes all of your money, all of my money, all of Ashley's money, everybody's money. He throws it together to get the premiums down. So we have a little bit more purchasing power than we would have going it alone. So I really appreciate that he does that. And he does send a price comparison sheet as well. And if you use promo code 1776, you're going to get some kind of constitutional silver, whether it's a silver dollar like this or a silver half dollar, a Morgan, maybe some silver dimes and quarters. But those are neat collectible items. I bumped my cable and muted myself. I will do an update. The last time I did Tony's show, I had mentioned that this particular coin, 1922 peace dollar, had sold for around, I think the highest it went for when it was resold after it was sold on what was the Pawn Stars. Yeah, Pawn Stars bought it. And then that person who bought it from them resold it for almost $100,000. This is not one of those. I just want to do an update. This is just a regular old peace dollar. But talking about the constitutional silver, the 90% silver, Tony charges you for what the silver weight is in it, or if you do the 1776 code, you're going to get it for free. But it's worth looking because they're collectible items too. And it's kind of neat to do the research. I had a lot of fun going through and doing the research on what is a high relief 1922 to see if I had something amazing, and a lot of fun factoids. I spent a better part of a day and then getting magnifying glass out and looking for all these things. It's kind of a fun thing, and it's something you could get your kids into as well. And I know that was a side tangent. And then on that note, I will shut up, and Ashley, you can provide any final thoughts where people can find you or whatever.
Yeah, well, people can find me Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Knights of the Storm with my co-hosts Jason Barker and Karen Carpenter. And I'm also over on X at think_change_2. And people could email me at thinkchangerepeat@gmail if they are interested in reaching out or sharing, some information or something like that. Feel free to do so. And also, I highly recommend joining Wise Wolf Gold and Silver. It's a lot of fun to get your package every month. And Jason sometimes send Karen and I one of the packs from Wise Wolf, and it's highly enjoyable, and it's fun to see what you get every month. And sometimes you get stickers and keychains, things like that. So highly recommend that. Otherwise, I just want to encourage people I know that a lot of this subject matter is very dark, but there is still good things in our life. There's still good people. There is enjoyment to be had there. We can focus and affecting change in our personal life and our home starting right this minute. We can practice gratitude. And again, I'm not preaching, I'm not an expert at these things. I just am trying to work on them. And I don't want us to get down with all of this news. It can be really overwhelming, but we can make the decision to not let it overwhelm us and just understand that sometimes, Ephesians 6:12, that we are battling with powers and principalities, and that it's not necessarily something that we can control as a whole, but we can control how we react and what we contribute to our relationships in our lives here. And the other thing, I just would recommend people to be very aware for pro-war propaganda. I would be on the lookout for if something does transpire that looks like some sort of a military kerfuffle, no matter where, to check the official story and to question the official story, because oftentimes, without making a very quick judgment, because a lot of times things come out after the fact that indicate what happened is not exactly what we have been told. So just keep that in mind, and of course, pray for peace. I think that the potential conflict with Iran and the other, as we talked about earlier, the proxy wars that we have going on, the situation with Venezuela, Cuba, all of these things are very concerning. So praying for peace, and that we may avoid war, World War III, or any further military intervention. So other than that, I just want to thank Tony for the opportunity to be here today, and I hope that I did a good enough job. Thanks, Jason, for all of your hard work and inviting me to join in. I really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you for coming in and helping out. I know it's helpful for Tony because Tony's got a lot of irons in the fire. He has multiple businesses he runs, and with the metals market as crazy as it is, he's really out there hustling to try to do right by us as far as getting us the best deals. So, I'm happy to help, and I'm glad that you were able to come out, Ashley. And I guess just make sure you go check out Tony. Tune in next week. He should be here next week. And I guess I'll close out like he says, end of transmission.